Awesome. Well, thank you all so much. And a special thanks to Eva and Oscar and Diana for making this happen. It's so great. It's such a good thing to do. So good morning from Denver, Colorado in the States. As Oscar said, I'm Patrick Riley, and I'm the CEO of GAN and also managing partner of our venture fund called GAN Ventures. So I studied something called interpersonal communications and social psychology. And the degree is all about how humans interact with each other, and more specifically, what causes anxiety and depression in humans. And frankly, I thought I was going to be a psychologist. It's what all my training was in, and fortunately, I'm now actually married to one. 10 years later, after studying that, I became the CEO of GAN. And if you don't know what GAN is, it's a highly curated community of 130 tech accelerators around the world. Collectively, they've helped 13,000 startups. But here's why I'm bringing that up today, is that in 2017, 2 different startups had suicides. We had 2 different CEOs who committed suicide, and frankly, it was devastating. Because number one, I'm passionate about it, and passionate about this issue. Never thought I'd imagine in a community that I'm a part of. And number 2, I felt incredibly sad for those founders. So I spent time going back through my degrees and also calling experts to figure out how we can avoid doing this again. And we ended up coming up with this thing called the Founder Wellness Pact. It's this pact that all the accelerators in GAN agreed to do in order to avoid things like suicides again. And it's things like, let's make sure our founders don't work more than 40 to 50 hours a week. Let's make sure that our founders sleep 8 hours a day. Let's make sure that there's an open line of communication so founders can come in and talk with us. And let's make sure we all know what the triggers are for depression. Yet, as I've traveled the world and talked to founders about this particular thing, over and over again, I'm hearing super similar things. And it's things that you maybe even going through your mouth. It's things like, I'm hearing founders say that even though I'm getting enough rest, and even though I'm talking to others, and even though I know the signs of depression, man, I'm feeling so burned out. And man, I'm feeling exhausted. And man, I don't know how long I can continue to do this. And the one I hear primarily over and over again is, man, I'm just not really that happy right now. But only that, as I've dug into this much more, there's this amazing data coming out of Crunchbase that shows why startups have failed. And they looked through all this data in the last 5 years. And what you found is that 66% of the reasons startups fail is because of either infighting among the team, or burnout among the CEOs, or the founders lose passion. And I would encourage you to go in and look at the Crunchbase article. It's called the Postmortem on Founders. And something last year happened to me personally. I was on a phone call with my assistant, walking around the park next to my office, and all of a sudden my heart started racing a ton, and I actually couldn't feel the left side of my face. Immediately I got off the phone call with her, and I was like, Ryan, I have to run. And I went to the hospital, which was luckily 8 blocks away. They did all these scans on me to go like, what is wrong? Is he having a stroke? Is he having a heart attack? What's going on? Turns out that there was nothing incredibly physically wrong with me. It turns out I was having something called a panic attack. And it's when that there's a continued amount of stress on you where it reaches a point where your bodies go into extreme fight mode, of the fight or flight situation. They go into extreme fight mode. And since then, I've shared this story with a lot of founders, just to go, hey, I personally experienced this panic attack, and I'm hearing more and more from founders who either recently had panic attacks or who are feeling depressed, but also who may not be feeling depressed, but who are feeling the stuff we talked about earlier, where they're feeling not happy, or they're feeling burnt out, or they're feeling exhausted, or they're not knowing like how much more they can actually go on. And as I talk to founders, they're going like, number one, like it seems like I'm getting sleep, and it seems like I'm doing all the right things, but it seems like I'm communicating, right? It seems like there's a bigger, deeper issue going on. So I spent a lot of time talking to my counselor about this and going, if Pat Riley, right? If someone who is so passionate about these things, is so passionate about making sure founders don't end up at this place and having all this education, if I have a panic attack, like I imagine like this is going to be happening for other founders around the world. So long story short, my counselor got to a place where he goes, hey, Pat, I want to just ask you a simple question. And the simple question he asked me was, hey, why are you doing this work? And I responded back to him. I'm like, listen, I'm doing this work because I love being a CEO. And he asked me again, he's like, but Pat, like, no, like, why are you doing this work? And I responded back, I'm like, well, no, I love doing this work because I love leading. And he's like, no, Pat, like, why are you doing this work? And I responded, and I'm like, well, I love building and growing things. And he's like, nope, why are you doing this work? I'm like, well, I'm doing this work because I want to feel useful. He's like, no, Pat, no. I'm like, but why do you need to feel useful? And my point is that I came to this point where I was going, unless I feel useful, like I don't feel like I'm valuable as a human being. It took 5 whys from him going, well, why do you want to do this, to being a CEO, to me ultimately going, well, if I'm not doing this work, I don't know if I'm, Pat Riley, going to be a valuable human being. There's this Buddhist monk out there that many of you probably know. His name is Techstars, who said that the things we hold on to will ultimately rule and drive us. And after talking to my counselor and realizing all this, I was like, it's this need to feel valuable that ultimately was driving me to work so hard and to reach a point where my body couldn't handle it anymore. To reach a point where I knew all the signs of depression and anxiety, but it was this thing. It was this underlying motivation of feeling like I'm not going to be valuable as a human being that led me to work crazy hours and to ultimately have a panic attack. And frankly, maybe none of you on the line are here. There's 367 people on the line. Maybe none of you are here. And hopefully none of you ever will be. But maybe you are. And whether you are or not, I would stop and ask yourself what I just talked about earlier today, these 5 whys. Like, what's the real reason you're doing this? Because that's the real thing that's driving you. And if you get to those 5 whys, right? If you go to yourself, and I would encourage all of you to do this, I would go like, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? Well, why are you doing that? And if you find that it's something driving you like money or needing an identity, I'm pretty sure that somewhere along the way, you may end up like one of those statistics on Crunchbase. But I found that if it's something that, the reason I'm doing this that's outside of myself, like something like changing the world or creating a more positive way for people to live, I have a feeling that, number one, all of us are going to be a lot happier. Number 2, all of us are going to be a lot less stressed. And we're not going to end up like a Crunchbase statistic. So thank you all so much. It's a pleasure to talk about this with you and happy to answer any questions later on today. Thanks so much, Oscar.